I left the Peru MTC, and from Lima, I flew to Trujillo. Trujillo has a small airport on the west side of the city. It's over by the beach. It's in that part of the city. And we landed, and I remember we got off this little plane, and like the staircases that there are on planes, like you see like movie stars like walking off of like their private jet like on like a little staircase. That was like what we had. And so because it was just a super small airport and like a super small plane, and so we like landed, and like we like descended the plane on these like stairs, and I felt like a celebrity, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the coolest place, because Trujillo is a beach. It's a city on the northern Peruvian coast. And so it was like super beachy, and we could smell the salt in the air and the water, and like the waves and the wind and everything. It was just, and it smells like fish, kind of. Not super terrible, but it just like, it smelled like the beach and like the coast and everything. And so I got there, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the best place ever. I was like already super in love. And my mission president and his wife picked us up from the airport, and we drove by the temple, and we stopped, and we didn't get off the bus, but we just took pictures of the temple from the bus that we were on, and then we went to the mission home, and we went to bed that night, and then the next morning we had interviews with our mission president and a couple meetings and everything, and then we went and got our trainers. I remember when I walked into the chapel where we would meet our trainers and be sent to our first areas. I was so nervous. And I saw this cute little blonde girl sitting across the way on the other side of the room. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, like, what would happen if I ended up with that little blondie? Like, what? I bet I end up with that little blonde girl. And I did. I did end up with that little blonde girl. She was my trainer. And my first area was a little town on the northern coast called Pacasmayo. And I remember that first week in the mission field was like the craziest week of my life, because in like the course of like 5 days, I like said goodbye to my sister in Lima. I flew to Trujillo. I got sent to my first area, which was 2 hours or like an hour and a half north of Trujillo. And then I like had like my first like night in the town, my first evening in my first area. And then the next morning we woke up, and I had to go to district meeting, which was in another town that we had to take a car to. And then so we had meetings that day, and it was like all super new to me, and I felt just like super lost and like just overwhelmed sort of. And then the next day, it just so happened that my zone got to go back down to Trujillo to go to the temple. And so I just felt like I was traveling up and down like the Peruvian coast like all week long. I was going from Lima to Trujillo to Pacasmayo to Chapén to Pacasmayo to Trujillo, it was so crazy. It was a whirlwind. So that's what I remember about my first week, just going back and forth between all these places. But it was really special that I got to go to the temple, my mission temple, my very first week in the field. That I truly consider a tender mercy of the Lord, because He knew how excited I was to go to the Trujillo temple. It was brand new. It was dedicated my very first Sunday in the MTC. So when I got to the field, it was like a newly dedicated temple. It was beautiful. It is beautiful. And I don't know, God knew how excited I was to go to a place that had a new temple. And so, I don't know, just the fact that I got to go my very first week in the field was really special to me. I just consider that a tender mercy